Good evening and welcome to a regular meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. It is the first Tuesday of the month, October 4th. It is 6 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time. Tonight I'd like to invite you first to join us in an invocation led by Pastor Ron Lawler, who is in the audience here, and immediately following that I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, so I invite you to stand and join us.
Shall we pray? Father, again, we're very thankful for the privilege and opportunity to live in this beautiful city, and I want to thank you for all the ladies and gentlemen who make the government work and take care of us, and representatives also of the support services throughout the city and the first responders. Thank you for each of these, the commitment of each of these, and pray for your blessing, your peace to be on them. Ask you to be with us tonight as we meet and as they wrestle through the different subjects that have to be dealt with. Pray for wisdom and for grace, and that it will be a productive and beneficial meeting. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Ron. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So tonight's meeting will be both a physical meeting location and a virtual meeting. Tonight's meeting may be viewed via YouTube. Notice I didn't say live, but I did say via YouTube and on cable channel 10 HD 1090. We're still wrestling with the live YouTube. City staff are participating both in person and via teleconference. Guests that are included in staff presentations will be excused from the Ring Central meeting at the conclusion of the agenda item as appropriate. So rather than call the roll, I know we've got 6 that are here with us, but we also have our Mayor Pro Tem who is under the weather but has agreed to attend our meeting virtually. So not sure she'll make the whole meeting, but welcome, Mayor Pro Tem Heisen.
Thank you, I'm here.
And I think with that, we do have a full council. So I'll move on to the agenda and ask if there are any suggested changes. Not seeing any, then the agenda is approved as presented. And then I believe that we don't have actually any presentations, so we'll move on to our citizen comment period. Citizens may comment on subjects of interest not listed on the agenda or items listed on the consent agenda. Citizens may also comment on corresponding agenda items. There are many ways to contact staff and city council, all of which are posted here. Citizens may also visit our website for methods to submit public comment or contact the city clerk, Julie Nestor, by phone or email as noted here. When submitting comments, please include your name and address. Public comments sent anonymously will be shared with the mayor and council, but won't be displayed during our meeting. We have not received any comments from the public since our last regular meeting. That is the case. Are there any members of the public present who wish to speak to items? Okay, not listed on the agenda. So with that, we'll move on to our consent agenda. We're really moving along tonight, aren't we? Yes, consent agenda. Questions? H? Yes. So that is item H. Any other? Okay. All other consent agenda items will be approved as presented. So we'll turn to H, which I believe is surplus authorization 1045 Ireland Drive. Councilor Hoffmeyer?
Yeah, and I totally support this. I just wanted to, possibly give staff 30 or 45 seconds to inform the public of the silent bid process, et cetera.
I think Sandra has a presentation, a brief one to...
Oh, great. Sandra, good to see you again.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. I do have a presentation. If you just give me a second, please. Okay, this item is the surplus authorization for the Ireland and the Whidbey house. This first house is the one that was previously used by the city council down below City Hall. We're estimating some repairs that were done on a facility assessment done in 2017 to be $99,502 just to get it back up to par. Proposed to sell or burn. This is the one that we had previously talked to council about, that we were going to do a burn with the fire department, and we were about 2 weeks out when we started getting some notice about it and that somebody wanted to buy it. And so we started to do the process to create a bid for a sealed bid process. So currently we have drafted one up, Steve Schuler and I have drafted one up, and it is now in the hands of our city attorney to be able to review and to give us some input. This is the first sealed bid that I've done. And so we are in the process of getting that document together. And once we do, then it needs to go out to all the public, and everybody will have an opportunity to have a turn in a sealed bid to be able to purchase the house and remove it from our property. The second house is the one by the senior center. Again, this one was also used by the Opportunity Council. It is vacant and it's currently being used for storage, some chairs and tables. And what the facility assessment came back on this one, just to get it up to par, it would be $69,872 in 2017 numbers. And we are proposing just to demolish this for additional parking. MRC gives you some guidelines on what to do. So we've determined the fair market value, which actually will only be done in the Ireland house once the sealed bids are open. If there is a public hearing, if required, there is no public hearing required for either of these properties at this time. We're passing a resolution this evening to be able to surplus it, to be able to sell it and or burn it. And then MRC would like us to just proceed with the sale. And as I said, we are going to do a sealed bid on the Ireland house. And there is a motion on the table, and if I need to explain any further, please let me know. Thank you.
Councilor, okay, any other questions? Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the surplus and disposal of 2 city properties located at 1045 Ireland Drive and 945 East Whidbey Avenue in Oak Harbor.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Motion reads exactly like the recommended motion in front of us. Motion is made by Councilor Hoffmeyer and seconded by Councilor Munns. Seeing no other input or questions, all in favor signify by raising your hand. Okay, and we have Councilor Heisen. Yes, got her hand raised. I can see it. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Interesting
Thank you.
Process.
Very much so, yes. I've learned a lot. It's very interesting.
I liked your hesitation when you said we started getting inquiries or whatever. It was like an interest. Well,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you for that, Sandra. Thank you for.
Thank you.
So we'll move on then to mayor's comments, followed soon by city comments. But we had Representative Larson held a community coffee town hall event this afternoon at the center. I was pleased to attend along with Councilmembers Stuckey, Hoffmeyer, and Munns. Staff in attendance included our Senior Services Administrator Lang, our Communications and IT Manager Combs, and our Central Services Supervisor Place. That's why I told Sandra it'd been a long time, because we just kind of left that meeting and came to City Hall, I think. Our thanks to the police department and Officer Esparza, especially for providing security. Thank you. Board and commission vacancies. The city has 2 vacancies on the Salary Commission and 1 vacancy on the Park Board. Please visit the city's website for more information on volunteering for these positions, and we could use your time and willingness to volunteer, please. 2023 LTAC grant applications. The city is now accepting LTAC grant applications for the upcoming year. Submissions are due by email no later than 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday, October 12, 2022. Applications are available on our website. It's homecoming week in Oak Harbor. The Chamber of Commerce suggests local businesses display our school spirit with purple and gold decorations, Go Wildcats, Coffee with a Cop, and other upcoming events. Our police department held the first of 2 Coffee with a Cop sessions last Thursday at Whidbey Coffee. The purpose of Coffee with a Cop is to break down barriers between police officers and the citizens they serve by removing agendas and allowing opportunities to ask questions, voice concerns, and get to know the officers in your neighborhood. Join your neighbors and police officers for coffee and conversation. Our next session is scheduled for Thursday, October 20 at 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Starbucks on Highway 20. And at this time, I'll turn to the council for any comments that you may have. Council comments? Okay, not seeing any? Okay, we will then move on to our agenda item number 6A. 6A is ordinance number 1963, amending the 2021-2022 biennial budget, amendment number 10. And for this evening, we have our finance director, David Goldman. Mr. Goldman?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. David Goldman, Finance Director. 10, this is the 10th budget amendment for the biennial. I think this might be the last one before we do the next biennial. So here's the funding status of the American Rescue Plan Act funds. We received a total of about $6.6 million of those funds. Those were allocated to Oak Harbor. The City Council allocated $6.12 million of that amount through previous action. Tonight, the ARPA subcommittee is recommending an additional $463,000 to be allocated, and taken together, that's almost 100% of all the funds that we have received. So this item will amend the 21-22 biennial budget through the end of 2022. Projects, initiatives, or temporary positions that extend beyond the end of this year will automatically be included in the next biennial budget, and that will be presented to the City Council later this month. So there's 5 items. The first item is a total allocation of $230,000 to fund a limited term through the end of 2024 Economic Development Coordinator position. About $17,000 will be included in this budget amendment, and the remainder of the funds will be included in the next biennial budget for the funding through the end of 2024. And one of the notes on this item was that this was included in the City Council budget goals that were developed during the previous biennial budget process. Item number 2 is a budget amendment for $30,000 to replace a failing lift station that serves city property where the yacht club is located. About $15,000 will come from ARPA funding, while the remaining $15,000 will come from the yacht club. Item 3 is an additional $38,000 for the Portland Lewis project, which will bring that project budget up for a total of $113,000. $18,000 will be included in this budget amendment, while the remaining $20,000 will be included in the next biennial budget. Item 4 is $50,000 for Police Department HVAC replacement and air conditioning expansion at the Oak Harbor Police Headquarters, and that amount will be included in the upcoming biennial budget. And finally, item 5 is an additional $130,000 to replace the low slope portion of the roof at the senior center, and that amount will be included in the next biennial budget. We also estimate that there'll be about $40,000 of ARPA funds left over from the first phase of the re-roofing project. So together, the 130 plus that 40 will bring up the funding for the second phase to $170,000. The next slide is a recommended motion, but before we do that, are there any questions, discussions, or comments?
So I think before we ask the council to do that, we actually need to open a public hearing. So I'd like to do that first and turn to the public, see if there's any comments or questions, and it doesn't look like there are, so we'll close the public hearing and now go to the council for input and questions. Yes, Councilor Munns.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Goldman, the $130,000 of the ARPA funds to replace the low slope portion, is that earmarked or is it just put into their budget, or is it earmarked in their budget?
It'll be earmarked in their budget. It'll be in a separate BARS account specifically for that project.
Okay, thank you.
Other input or question? Yes, Councilor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm still struggling with the economic development position. $230,000. We've got a lot of wonderful staff in this city. You know, David Cool with the Development Services Department. People like that are out working with business owners and investors in our town every single day. And I'd honestly love to see a bonus program for people like that if they were to bring an opportunity to the city. I think that'd be a great way to incentivize them to push a little further with the people that they're already working with and potentially with the people that are coming in to inquire about opportunities in the city. So that's something I heard from some members of our community. I think it's a good idea. But the economic development coordinator position, I'm still struggling with it because I just don't know that we're there yet. My thoughts. Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I too share the same concerns about the economic development position. One of the concerns I have is how much additional funding, aside from just the salary, will this position require? Looking at the essential job functions, number 3 is to implement a business recruitment and retention campaign and marketing strategy and business assistance programs. Those types of things cost money. I mean, it's not just the salary of the employee, but a marketing campaign costs money, you know, and so is this $230,000, what does that include? Is that just simply salary and benefits? What other additional costs is this position going to potentially require? And then, you know, looking at some of the job responsibilities, it looks like there's quite a bit of overlap between what this position would require and what our chamber currently does and what the Economic Development Council currently does. Two things that we're already contributing a significant amount of money to. Before we start adding additional admin positions, I would prefer to see that all of our, we have the amount of employees that we need in each department. You know, we've talked about for quite some time, there's been a shortage or one person down in the Parks Department. Before creating an additional admin position, I'd love to see that money being earmarked towards filling that vacant position, you know. So I think that we've got some new positions. We're working to get those positions filled and trained and all of that. I think adding another admin position at this time when not all of our city positions are full is putting the cart in front of the horse. So.
Councilor Munns.
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree with Councilman Marshall. We just put more money into the county EDC, and they've been working with the chamber to either offer classes or how to start a new business or how to improve my business to get things done, whether it be a web page. I mean, there's all kinds of things. I would like at least a year to see how that's going and what's improved. But I think our Parks Department is definitely needs at least one more full-time employee that's not seasonal. That in interviewing one of the candidates, he was saying he couldn't believe how much parkland we had. And that's not even the new park that hasn't been built. And so I just, let's see what the county, they brought some wonderful ideas to us. They've been working with the chamber. We have a new chamber director, at least just for a year. Can we just put a hold on that? Everything, but maybe just pull that one. And I don't know if you set it aside, earmark it for later or what, but I would like to see what these other two entities do. And then maybe we would change the scope of the EDC person. So that's just to say, we've had Aaron Spool down, he was in.
Ethan.
Ethan Spool, there you go. Starts with an E, got it. And, he worked, but it seemed like at times, trying to split, he spent more on one or the other, so it suffered. And then we had the lady that was brought in that had worked with tribes and the military and stuff like that, and that kind of went awry. So I would just like to see how this other goes, but I'm just one person, so thank you.
One of the questions was, could this be approved without that part, the 234 fund limited term? And I assume the answer is yes. It certainly could be. Okay. Councilor Hoffmeyer.
Yeah, I want to touch on this, kind of a 3 or 4-fold thing, and I certainly hope that this is able to pass. Councilor Stuckey, myself, and Mayor Pro Tem Heisen, we were fortunate enough to go down to a triple ribbon cutting on Saturday down here on Fidalgo Avenue at the Hive Jive, PMW Vibes Market, and the Tipsy Jellyfish. And, it was there that, we all three told the business owners, if you need anything, reach out to us. And that's what we continue to tell them. Reaching out to an individual counselor doesn't really help set up a new business. It doesn't help continue or grow an existing business. Intentional economic development is what the community continues to ask for. And just like the businesses are able to use the Island County Economic Development Council, it's not Oak Harbor specific though, so they really get spread thin. I mean, when Sharon Sappington was here, we heard from Sharon that she's only got herself and 2 very part-time consultants. This could be specifically Oak Harbor and could do so much good for these businesses. It's what they continue to ask for. Another thing that I wanted to touch on is, continuity of government. It would have been easy for some of the new counselors to come on board and say that every single idea the past council had was horrible and a bad idea. But it's not. Their number one goal there of intentional economic development, that's the number one goal that they should have had. And that's the number one goal that we should have. Economic development is never going to happen on its own. This is the only way that we're going to have intentional economic development, in my opinion. And I think if not now, the question becomes when or if ever. So it kind of touches on those two things. The other thing I want to get to is, such as the property down on Pioneer Way that we bought, or that we're in the process of trying to purchase. We all want there to be a plan. This position is who should be putting that plan together. If we're going to look at possibly owning an airport or something of this sorts, we sure as heck should have this position. So that's why I strongly support this, and I really hope that we're able to get to at least 4 votes on it. Thank you.
Councilor Stuckey.
Yeah, thoughts and questions on 2 of the items. One is the $20,000 to $35,000 for carpet and paint for the training room for the police department. I don't know much about these sort of things, and $20,000 to $35,000 for some paint and some carpet seems awful steep. Am I?
Sorry to interrupt. That was not funded. That was the sheet that was provided to us.
Oh, I'm sorry.
To ask for funding, but the only item that was funded was the top item,
Okay.
or that was recommended for funding.
I understand. Okay. Then going back to the economic development person, I'm cautiously optimistic. I mean, that is something that in 2 years the council may just have to own and say that didn't really work. So with that in mind, this is a position that needs to have accountability, and it needs to be an active position, not a passive one, not a here's my phone number, call me if you need me. If we do approve it, I definitely want to see a monthly report to the workshop. I would also like the idea of having an economic development commission, like the other boards and commissions we have, that this person would work in tandem with. And I do have a question for our mayor and our city administrator who are here, and personnel is their thing. Is this a position that you two believe is needed for our city?
I would start with the saying that if nobody's assigned to do it, it doesn't get done. So certainly we all take turns doing economic development and this position doesn't get scented, the earth isn't going to drop. We'll continue to share it. And then but certainly the more you have the position, I think a good demonstration of that is the grants writing. We've always been doing grants writing and such, but we funded a grants position, and it really has upped our game. Also, previous discussion here was a job description, so we went ahead and put a job description created on it. I think it's pretty much ready if we hire this position to have that, looking at other cities, looking at our job description in the past. So we've made it a priority that when this was brought back. But certainly, it's the will of the council to do it. Certainly, on accountability, the mayor and I are committed to making this position successful. I think we've made other positions, like our communications IT manager, successful. I think we've made the new position for the grants successful, and I think we'll strive to keep that record of making positions. It's really important to get value out of positions for the citizens we serve, but certainly it's up to the majority of council whether we do it. But I'm committed to making this position successful, and I know Mayor Severns is committed if council elects to fund it.
Yeah, I'll speak to it a little bit myself. So my background is business, as most of you know. The addition of employees is not something that gets across my desk easily, and I think Mr. Olburn will attest to that. Just adding employees is not something that I get very excited about without a plan, without a well-oiled plan that we've worked on. Quite frankly, I don't have any great plan for this position at this point. I certainly will require one very quickly, and if you choose to fund this. If you choose to fund this, I would expect that Mr. and Councilor Evans mentioned our development services people downstairs. My past experience in this city is that we had a good thing going with a half-time employee who worked in development or in this economic development area for part of his day. But it worked in conjunction with that department downstairs, development services, because it was obvious that's where the questions were. And we have people coming in with questions, and when we had the person that saw the opportunity that, boy, this person wants to build a fourplex or a complete development, we get them aside, we have a plan to sit down with them, and that's what we'll do if you choose to hire this. I'm not going to allow a new employee to come in and sit for very long without a plan. And we will have a plan that will come back to you so that you can look at it. Again, it certainly has to be, in my estimation, in tandem with the Development Services Department downstairs. And then particularly our people that greet. We've talked about how we're doing that today. We'll have somebody come into finance because that's really where we welcome people. Well, oftentimes they're there to pay a bill, but sometimes they're there to ask about economic development opportunities. So we either get finance and those people that greet our people every day involved, or we do things a little differently. And we've been talking about doing things differently in this building, so that we try to get those people quickly. We set up a customer relations plan so that we don't let them out the door until we've got more information, until we've got them with the proper person. So, long answer. I wish I had a better plan to put in front of you today, this evening. We'll get one in a hurry if you want to go this direction. And I knew that we would probably have some hesitation to do it. And I don't blame you, because we haven't done it very well. We had a half-time person that did it okay. We haven't done it very well, and if we're going to do it, we need to do it a whole lot better. So I guess I'm saying, if you fund it, we will set up a plan and get it back to you. And obviously, it's set up to be funded through the end of 2024. So it's certainly not a forever plan. So it's going to have to work before that. It's going to have to work long before that to make me very happy. Councilor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and I knew this was going to be, some discussion to take place here. But, we've discussed this, we've talked about other things. We've kicked the can down the road, and we've actually been discussing this as long as I've been on council. The last two biennial budgets, it was one of the top items we put in there, and one of the last items that we cut at the very end when we were finally truing up the numbers. And when you get to that final cut, it's something that's kind of important. This didn't just come off the table at the beginning. And we talked at our last retreat, priorities, and intentional economic development. Well, intentional isn't going to happen itself. My thought is we're going to know more through the hiring process. Just because we fund a position doesn't mean we're going to find somebody to fill it. I mean, I just want to make sure we're clear on that. I don't think anybody here thinks that we're just going to go out and hire somebody to hire somebody. I think that as we go through this hiring process, if we were to fund this position, we would find that there are people out there that do this for a living and understand even more about it than what we think we understand. The one thing I do understand is the city is responsible for very certain things, protection, police and fire. Obviously, our parks are a big part of our community. Our infrastructure is a big part of our community. And planning. Planning is a big part of our community. And we have planners downstairs, and those guys do a great job. And they've all got their specialties, right? We have a planner for streets, and that's what he knows is streets. And we have a planner for when it comes to building codes, and again, that's what they were specially trained for. And those are kind of the people we kind of rely on right now in a piecemeal fashion when somebody does come as a real estate broker. I have people come to me all the time, looking to do a feasibility study on, commercial piece of property or a multifamily. I've got a gentleman right now doing a feasibility study on a 50-unit multifamily condo complex. It would be a great thing to have here in one little development. And where do I send him? Well, right now I've sent him to the planners, and I've sent him over to Public Works, and I've got him kind of talking to a few different people, and who's grabbing him and holding him and saying, yeah, this is something. Let's face it, we have to decide what the city's going to look like 25 or 50 years from now. That's part of what leadership should be doing. And the reality is, all of us, we could all sit down and probably have a whole lot of different visions there, but the reality is, as just overall leaders in our community, if we're not focused on that and thinking about that, does that mean we're just relying on the public to do it, or are we just relying on it to happen? Whatever the city ends up looking like in 25 years, that's what it was. And I've just got to look to little town of Langley, the town that could, right? The town that sat down and said, okay, here's the type of businesses we want to attract to our city, and therefore we need to build these type of buildings and these type of landscapes and these type of walkable little paths and these type of little shops. And then, of course, they did a really great job of going out and finding the businesses to fit into those spaces. So to me, this is kind of a fundamental part of city, what the city should be delivering to the public. Whether or not we're going to find the right person for this kind of money, and whether or not as we go through the hiring process, we're going to discover, gee, there isn't one person out there who can fulfill this list of 17 items that we'd like, that's maybe that's a multi-person thing. But I agree with Mayor Severns. I remember the day when we had a half-time person, and I had a person, I just gave them, here's the person to call. And they would call that person, and if that future business owner had questions about traffic flow counts, well, they didn't have to go talk to a different planner, they didn't have to, and that different planner wasn't there that day, and, that person kind of took the ball, ran with it, got the information, and quite frankly, I think it was a better use of our planner's time, right? To have a staff member come with a very direct question, get an answer, the planner tells them where to get the answer, that person then goes off and gets the answers rather than the planner sitting down with each individual coming into the city to doing a feasibility study and maybe having 2 or 3 different planners sitting down with that individual to the point where that individual really doesn't know who is their contact person and who am I talking with. So I know other communities around us are doing it. I didn't go to the extent, of calling up other communities and asking them how their economic development coordinators are doing and what they're paying or anything like that. I just feel from a business standpoint, from somebody who's lived in this community for quite some time, who, has gone through the process, who, is, goes through the process still every day to an extent, with at least providing guidance to people. And I know what we've tried in the past in this. I know what's worked and what hasn't. I remember, and that's one good thing is we get a little age on us. We remember some things that have happened in the past. Of course, we also forget a few things. But I certainly remember the highs and the lows of this in the past. I just feel as though in today's economy, with what we have coming in front of us, which filling some of our spaces in town may be a little harder than it was, and filling them with the types of businesses that are going to allow our community to thrive may be even tougher. And as a commercial business owner, boy, I'd love to have somebody at the city I could go let them know, that I've got a space available and what kind of accommodations I'm willing to make. And, if everybody was then directing that person to that one person, I would see that as a positive. But I just think in today's economy, if we went out there and was looking for a person with the job description we have, I think we'd find some pretty experienced people out there. I think we'd find people that want to come to our community and bring their expertise in this area. And, I think we could create some really good things rather than just let some stuff happen. Thank you.
Just FYI, Ethan Spoo left our city to move with his wife after a second child was born and to a different location. So I think he enjoyed the job while he was here. Again, it was part-time, but he didn't leave for any other reason than yes.
Mayor Pro Tem has her hand up.
Mayor Pro Tem Haslund.
Thank you. I support the Ordinance 1963 and the budget amendments in full, including the economic development coordinator position. There's everyone who spoke made a lot of sense and brought up some great points. And so I hear all those concerns. I share some of those concerns, but I also share some optimism. I think we can't wait until the conditions are ideal to hire this position. I think that we should hire this position and help that person help us create those conditions. And I don't think it'll happen without a little bit of a nudge. And this money won't get spent unless we actually end up hiring somebody. And so I support going out and looking and finding, the perfect person. Like, I'm sorry, I can't remember who said it, or maybe it was the mayor, that the sky wouldn't fall if we didn't fill the position. But, something really wonderful could happen if we did. So I'm willing to try. And for that reason, I move to adopt ordinance number 1963, budget amendment number 10.
Second.
We now have a motion to adopt ordinance number 1963, amendment number 10, and a second motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Heisen, second by Councilor Wiesner. So, time for more questions? Yes, Councilor Munz.
Thank you. So I've been listening, everybody's got good points. I guess re-looking over what coordinating and getting reports from different things, then why is the EDC person not located downstairs under service development? Because there it's, we've got the codes, what can be where. They should have a plan as to where our sewer, that's over in engineering, but the sewer and water lines are, and I think I'm trying to remember when Mr. Thompson came in and looking at the land across from what's now Safeway, I was surprised to find out that there hadn't been a plan about the water and sewer and stuff it was there, but there wasn't a plan on this is how we think all the pipes and stuff should go. So, no offense, Mr. O'Byrne, but if I remember Ethan, he did some good work because he knew he was down there, he heard the chit chat, he knew who was there and he could go. So if he's up here and he answers to you, it's kind of like, oh, well, now you have to go down and get a middleman. If that was rearranged, I'm just thinking that maybe that would be a better fit than the city administrator, because he's doing this other stuff and this and that. So I'm just throwing it out.
Mr. Oborn?
Yeah, can I speak to you raised some good points there, and so my preference is actually to have the position located downstairs and be part of development services. Past council had kind of put the impetus on answering to the city administrator, but I could certainly go either way, and certainly it's up to the council. Your other question there about the EDCIC, the Economic Development Council for Island County, it's county-centric for economic development. This position would be city-centric for economic development.
But I also remember she said, no, I'm not just doing county. City is part of the county.
Oh, yeah.
So when she was doing her thing and we were discussing on where the money should go, we don't want to give her money and it only stays in the county. So I'm just trying to see how she was looking at it and sold how she could help the city. So anyway, thank you. Appreciate it, sir.
Have
we given some additional money to the EDIC?
Yeah, we did.
In the sense?
We approved that $10,000 per year, $20,000 total for that, and I think that gives us extra services, but this is another bonus, but certainly it's the will and pleasure of the and a policy decision of the council on which way to go.
Councilor Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I've heard several times that this has been a high priority position, but I've also heard that it doesn't make the cut on the budget, and that concerns me, is that we're going to fund a position for 2 years, and I'm concerned that the caliber of person that we will get, we may get good candidates, but realistically, we're offering $106,000 a year after you take out the 17, and I'm assuming that includes benefits, so you cut that down, it'll be under 100,000 is what we're actually going to be offering this person then, with only a 2-year guarantee, with the history of not funding this position for several budget cycles. And when I look at what our current city council summary goals are, this ranks number 14. It doesn't rank even in our top 10. So we talk about it being a high priority, but when we actually come down to the brass of it, it doesn't seem like it's that high of a priority. If it's not being funded, it's not even in the top 10 of our city council goals. I think that we are covering a lot of these bases with our chamber, with the Island County Economic Development Council. Mayor, you made a good point that this is really tied with development services. We've got a lot in process with development services, including potentially SDCs and increasing that cost. And what is that going to do to that economic development person's ability to bring in new businesses when we're still so much unknown in terms of what are the SDCs going to be and what's our, we're still working on our permitting process. And so I think there are things that we need to be working on in development services, and we have the right staff to do that, but those need to be cleaned up and finished before we start trying to bring people into development services and continue with that process. So That's my thoughts.
Okay. Other questions or input about the motion? Are you ready to vote? All in favor of the motion as recommended, please signify by raising your right hand. So we have, looks like 4. All opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes 4-3. Okay. Okay, so that's item number 6A. We will then move on to item number 6B, continuation of public hearing, ordinance number 1959, critical areas ordinance code amendments. This public hearing will be further continued to October 18th. Is there, that's what my notes say. Am I turning this to anybody else?
No, Mayor, just the notice that it is being continued to October 18th.
Okay, so continuation of public hearing, ordinance 1959, critical areas, ordinance code amendments. Public hearing will be further continued to October 18th at that meeting. Yes, Mr. Romo.
Yeah, just in case the council has any questions, our Development Services Director, David Kuhl, is available. But you're right, the recommendation is to continue it.
Okay. It doesn't look like we have any questions. Okay, then that concludes item number 6.
Mayor,
Yes.
we need a motion. It was
Oh.
continued before to a specific date, and it takes a motion to continue it.
Okay, yes, Councilor Munns.
If there aren't any other questions, Mayor, I move we continue the hearing for the public hearing ordinance number 1959, critical areas ordinance code amendments to October 18th, 2022.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second to continue the ordinance 1959, ordinance code, critical areas ordinance code amendments to October 18th, 2022. That motion was made by Councilor Munn, seconded by Councilor Evans. Any other questions or input? Seeing none, all in favor signify by raising your right hand. So I think that passes unanimously, yes. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, I see it now. Good. We'll move on now then to item number 9A. This is under other items for consideration, special meeting, November 30, 2022, 2 p.m., the final 2023-2024 biennial budget hearing. For this, I'm going to turn to our Finance Director, Mr. David Goldman, again, to present the request from staff. Mr. Goldman?
Thank you. So per RCW 35A 33070 and 35A 34110, the City Council must hold a public hearing on the adoption of the budget on or before Monday, December 5th, 2022. The regular City Council meeting is the next day, Tuesday. So the idea was to have a special hearing on November 30th for the purposes of having the final biennial budget hearing. But obviously, it's up to the City Council whether or not they want to do that, or they have might have other options that they want to explore as well.
Okay, Mr. Goldman, your request is that the council consider setting a special meeting for that time and date.
Yes.
Okay, any input, questions, motions? How do you feel about that? Yes, Councilor Hoffmeyer.
I'm available that day.
I move to hold a special city council meeting on November 30th, 2022 at 2 p.m. to conduct the third and final public hearing on the 2023-24 biennial budget.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Set the special meeting to November 30, 2022 for the final 2023-2024 biennial budget hearing. And that's November 30 at 2 p.m. We have a motion by Councilor Wiesner, second by Councilor Hoffmeyer. Any other input or questions, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor signify by raising your right hand. That passes unanimously. That would mean none opposed. Okay. We are now on to item number 9B, council goals presentation. And this is, did I hear an echo? I think I've said that before a time or two. Mr. Oborn, council goals presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Oak Harbor City Administrator Blaine Oborn. It's my pleasure to be your facilitator as the council goes through this process of determining the top council goal prioritization. So if we can go to the next slide here. Just a little background from the packet in here. You can see the detailed scoring and all the council members. I thought I'd be present, just be transparent there and give everybody scores that they had from 0 to 3 there. Some council members decide not to score, so if they didn't score, I just gave them a 0. The original idea was 1 to 3, but I dealt with that kind of change in that manner there. And then we used the previous grouping they were familiar with, and like I said, the detail is there. So going on to the next slide, drum roll please. The top 10 goals, rather than talk about the council's priorities, are the individual lines that are more numerous for just summary purposes. I used the summary that I provided previous on each goal and just ranked them that way. So incidentally, 3 of them are related to economic development and possibly even more. So it just shows the priority there. So first goal is the downtown and marina category, which is downtown revitalization. Next one's repair for utility infrastructure. Windjammer Park, I think council, that's the message to council, to staff, that we need to get that plan going and get that going there. Utility rate stabilization, I think we already spent a lot of time on that and continue to work on that issue. And the subcategory of that is the system development fees that we're still evaluating options there. And then downtown and marina expansion is the number 5. 6 is planning, city infrastructure, and then park and recreation partnership, and then city employees morale, continue to make that a priority, and then downtown and marina dredging, and community development and expansion of the joint planning area. So as mentioned earlier, there was a number of other items that didn't make it here, as far as and then it's also one thing we could do here is we can continue to look at using this as part of the budget process. That's what we did 2 years ago. So the council kind of has these goals in mind when they go through the budget process that is upcoming, and then that we've already started. And then also this helps staff in knowing, in prioritizing our workload and taking into account the goals there and implementing these goals. Moving on, as far as options, next slide, please. Yeah, so the option here, we talked about 10 goals, and that's kind of what we talked about, but that's not a, you could certainly tweak this. So you can stick with the approved 10 goals as presented. You can make changes to the top 10 goals. You can further define the goals now or later, and certainly as we went through this whole process, council has done before, is derived another method of prioritization and take another area on that. The last slide here is the recommended motion, just to go ahead and formally approve these 10 ranked goals, and then we'll include them as part of our budget presentation and for the record here going forth. And we just called attention to previous records, so this will be the record of the goals that are current city council goals until the council decides to make additional goals. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you go back to the ranking?
Yes. Who's ever controlling it for me? There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, and in the packet, I gave you all 32 of them, but it just makes it easier to fit here on just the 10. And that's what we kind of talked about. Our goal was to to pick top 10.
Councilor Munns?
Thank you, Mayor. So I understand, and the top 10 looks good, it helps define it, but there's a low-hanging fruit on this tree with the topsoil. I did not know till Mr. Evans explained his reason for putting on there that when developers are doing properties, that they scrape good topsoil. So why couldn't we still see about taking advantage of that, and say, we'll take it off your hand and be able to use it in areas that we need to for our parks? To me, that would be a win-win. I mean, it doesn't have to be one of the top 10, but it's a low-hanging fruit that seems like it's not that hard or that expensive to come up to an agreement. Because service development knows when they're going to start building and scraping and stuff like that. So I'm just, if that could be done. Thank you.
Is that currently on the list? Is it one of these 32?
It is number 25.
Okay.
It became apparent that we needed some nice topsoil, but instead of buying it and spending all this money, we've got the connections, we know when they're going to be working, so thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Munns. Okay, so we'll keep going with questions here. Councilor Hoffmeyer?
I agree with Councilor Munns there. Very low hanging fruit. You know, that's why I didn't put it in my top 10 or anywhere there near, because great idea. It seems to be a no-brainer. So I would say let's make that happen. Would be my take. The only thing I see looking at this here is downtown and marina, downtown revitalization, downtown and marina expansion, downtown and marina dredging. Those all three should be separate categories, but I still think they should be only one goal. So my only suggestion would be that, you know, we take everything, we take the top 17, for instance, because if you look at there's 3 for the marina. I think they should be separate, but I also think that that's kind of one goal as well. Same with infrastructure, parks. So if you took the top 17, that gives you close to 10 separate categories, which I would prefer. Thank you.
Councilor Stuckey?
I kind of echo a little bit what Hoffmeyer said. I mean, you look at the scores, and a lot of these are tied or off by 1. Just the fact that 2 council members didn't put anything down for a few of them, put zeros, affects the whole thing. You know, the goal was put 1, 2, or 3, not 0 or don't answer. Just doing that has changed the metrics, especially when everything's so close. I'm kind of surprised that 7th Avenue, to be honest, isn't up there. That was kind of surprising to me. But I would say that we should at least take the ones through that are rated 15 because it's so close. And again, it's 1 digit from the 16. And again, I didn't know we could do 0. So I agree. We should take on more of these. And just because it's not in the top 10 doesn't mean we can't address it. It's just not a priority, you know, like the topsoil. You know, I wasn't one that put it as a high mark either, but doesn't mean we can't do something that takes us very minimal effort. So it doesn't mean we're only doing the 10 goals and nothing else matters. I don't want to say this list is arbitrary. I'm not going to go that far, but it's just saying there's a heightened focus on these items. So again, like Hoffmeyer, I would say we can combine a couple of these. I would go with the 15s on there just because it's 1 point off. And again, putting 0 down or not answering some of those questions, I mean, there's one of them that's on the top 10 I would have put 0 on, and that would have then bumped it down, and we would have a 4-way tie for 15. So just a thought.
Councilor Wiesner?
Yeah, great job, Mr. Olborn. I know it's like herding cats, right? But what I'd like to see is maybe go back and take some of what you're getting tonight and take a few liberties, maybe, and come back with one more try at it. Because here's the way I see it: Park and Recreation partnership. Well, partnership, what's the goal of a partnership? Well, it's to enhance programs. right? So we have down here park, you know, down the list. So the reality is, I mean, I think those are two same items. I think downtown marina, revitalization, I think revitalization and expansion, I think we're gonna have to dredge to expand. I think that's all part of the same discussion. Obviously, city infrastructure, planning is one thing. Utility infrastructure repair, I think we're all on the same page when we're thinking utilities, streets, I mean, it's infrastructure. And I mean, does it help us any to understand that some of our, I think all of us would agree that some of our bigger goals for infrastructure are West Whidbey Avenue and Northeast 7th Avenue. I think we've all said that numerous times over and over again. I don't want this to become too broad, because I realize goals, the more specific they are, the more focused you can be on them. But at the same time, I feel like we're leaving some other low-hanging fruit. Northeast 7th, how close are we to finally reaching that goal of Northeast 7th Avenue after, 7 years, 8 years in discussion? The goal is right around the horizon. Would we be doing ourselves or our constituents justice if we took our eye off that goal and said it was no longer a priority? So I think, in my mind, letting you take a little liberties and maybe grouping some of these together, so that we come up with a top 10 that's really reflective of what we're trying to say. Again, park and recreation, I'm really surprised, we only had 13 points on enhanced programs, because I think we all feel as though we can probably do a little bit better job with the recreation. I mean, we just created a park and recreation director position, right? Which I think is an attempt to provide enhanced programs through partnerships. I think that's one of the ways we think we're going to get there. Does that make sense? Did I help at all, or did I make it worse?
No, you helped. I just got to make sure that there's 6 more votes in that direction, I guess. That's what I...
Well, and that's just my thoughts. I think there's some low-hanging fruit that's really part of some of the goals you have up above.
Yeah, I mean, you've given some good comments here, and I certainly can go back and tweak it again based upon your comments and do that. But that's where we talked about in the option here, tweaking this, and this is your goal. So I'm just trying to facilitate to get something that all 7 of you want to live with for a couple of years until we do a new set of goals and to help us with the budget process. But it was interesting that some of the goals here, certainly one of our the chief's number 1 goal is the referendum in the fire levy. And so, so that didn't make that. But interesting enough, there really wasn't a really gap here. It just goes down to 2019. There was an 18 skipped, but there wasn't a lot of numbers in that 1 to 20 in that numbering to there in the scoring. So it's really a good point that it's just not sometimes you reach where it's a skip of 3 votes, and so okay, that's the cutoff, and it's just really not an easy cutoff here, just the way it happened to come out. So. So I guess I'm interested. Have you kind of put an option here? There's been 3 or 4 options kicked around, so I just got to figure out which ones the majority here for the council.
Councilor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm really glad to see the top 10, because that's what it is. It's just the top 10. We can have more goals than 10. The other thing that I would just like to be clear on is, like the fire department levy, I didn't mark that high. We already supported it. We've already shown that we're supporting it. So I didn't want to, blow the power of the things that we haven't addressed yet by keeping them from the top 10, by putting things that we're already in process on up on the top 10. It kind of loses its flair. I'm happy to see these things individualized as the downtown marina revitalization, the dredging. These are things that need to happen individually for the grand scheme of all of it. So I'm kind of torn with your grouping, because I mean, as council, we all rated these. And for those of you that put zeros on stuff, I don't know why, but this was our opportunity to tell our counterparts what's important to us. And this is where we agree. So let's take it and let's run with it. That doesn't mean that we can't address the other items on the list. It's just, this is the top 10. This is where we sit as a body.
I am glad that you mentioned the fire levy, because I think that was the feeling of pretty much everybody on the council, that's already out to the voters, so it's not like.
Yeah, no offense, Chief.
We all support it.
We got your back.
I think that's clear that it's supported, so. Okay, Councilor Hoffmeyer.
I've listened to what everybody has said here, and I think, boy, maybe this is simple. Can we just, I guess this would be my suggestion, can we just go ahead and rename this the Top 19 Summary?
Doesn't get the topsoil on there, does it? That's number 25. Councilor Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go with Councilmember Wiesner's recommendation. I do think that downtown and marina is one category with 3 subcategories. We can't revitalize or expand our downtown and marina without dredging, and so we have to do the dredging. And so that's part of, it's a subcategory of the larger category. And I think Parks and Rec could be a category with a couple subcategories and so on. And that way we can accomplish the 19 with a top 10, but we know that each category has got some points to it that have to be addressed and worked on as well. So
It sounds to me like it's back in your court, Mr. Olborn.
So can I say the direction is to come back and tweak this a little bit and come back to the council and a little bit more
I'm sorry.
concise?
Mayor, Councilmember Heisen has her hand raised.
Mayor Pro Tem Heisen, go ahead. Sorry.
No worries at all. Excuse me. I agree completely with Councilmember Evans. I think that, yeah, I didn't know that entering 0 was an option. So I think, maybe our math is a little messed up because of that, but I think that we get the gist. And there are certainly several of these that can be combined, or at least, like Councilmember Marshall said, there could be subcategories. And I also agree with Councilmember Hoffmeyer about maybe, this could be a top 19 with with the top 10 highlighted. And there are there's things, like 7th Avenue, Whidbey Avenue, fire levy, all of that stuff that's already in process. We did, the Bailey's Playground and the Shipwreck Shores was all done very much with, special needs children in mind. And so whenever we are developing a playground, having one, real specifically for any kind of special needs or neurodivergence or physical limitations, that's the way things are going. And that's always going to be part of the planning process. And so, for those reasons, that's why things that I thought were going to happen anyway, I didn't rate real high. Doesn't mean they're not important. It's just, what needs our attention immediately and what is going to actually be going to happen anyway. The topsoil thing, we could absolutely incorporate that into just the way we do business. So what I don't want to happen is for us to take our top 10 out of this and then forget everything else on the list, because I think that everything on the list has merit, and I think that it's important that we keep it all in mind. So I wouldn't mind expanding the list with a highlighted top 10, but I think that combining a lot of these into topics with, subcategories, an overall goal with, subcategories of how we're going to actually accomplish those things, I think that will go a long way towards whittling down the list so that it's not so overwhelming. And I think that they're good goals. I think every one of these is worth some attention. And so if we can, Blaine, if you can do a little work your magic and combine some of these, do some wordsmithing, I'd be happy to help. We can get this to a manageable list without forgetting some of the really good ideas that, just might not have gotten as much attention as some of the big stuff. that's my contribution. Thank you.
Councillor Stuckey.
Trying to not to sound too cynical. I kind of almost want to say, and let me expand on it, what's the point of this? I mean, that's to say, I mean, you take, for example, I've made no bones about the fact that the accessible playground is a passion project of mine. If we have the opportunity, if somehow we get grants and we have the opportunity to have accessible playground equipment, what's not in the top 10, are we going to say, nope, not in the top 10, not going to do that? I mean, this is a good thing that we know where our colleagues kind of sit on things. But, you know, if, for example, I see a water taxi come on here, I can't imagine a situation where I would support a water taxi, but it's case-by-case basis, you know? So we can spend more time, we can massage goals, we can spend more meeting time over this. I don't think it's necessary unless there's actually a tangible, hard effect these are going to have. And if there is, and I'm missing it, then let me know. I mean, it's good that staff kind of knows where we as a body kind of like to put our time and priorities, but it needs to not be rigid. It needs to be flexible, and each issue needs to be talked about the merits as it comes up. So I don't know if going back, redoing this, rehashing it, spend more time is necessary. We see this, we see where our current priorities somewhat lie, and we can just go from there. So I don't know if it's necessary to keep bringing this back.
Councillor Wiesner?
Well, you know, I'd be okay with having a top 32 with a top 10 highlighted. You know, there's certain things there that are below that 10 that I just don't think we need to lose thought of or lose sight of, right? And let's face it, the top, you know, the only gap really gets down when you get to the top 30. I mean, it's you know, well, it looks like you have a skip there at 11, right? But otherwise, it's point to point to point to point to point. You know, and you look down this list, quite frankly, downtown and marina, restrooms. Well, I think that's part of our revitalization. I mean, it really is, right? I mean, we're going to revitalize our downtown and not do restrooms, probably not, right? But maybe it's okay to have that out there and hanging out there in front of us, right? And, you know, if we make the list and I guess have the top 10 highlighted and then you know, I guess that's just another way to get there. I just want to make sure that, you know, let's face it, there's some of these items in this top 14, top 15 that we all have to look at. I mean, affordable housing, come on, folks, we've been talking about affordable housing for years now, and you know, it's a hot topic, you know, with our constituents, and to think that we're going to leave that off of our focus. Now, let's face it, we're making strides towards that. We've made some code changes. I mean, we've made some fairly dramatic code changes that could help with some of the infill, which of course is another one on here, community development. You know, and maybe that's why some of us didn't rate them higher, because we feel as though they're already priorities, they're already in the works. I just hate to not acknowledge the fact that our work isn't done there, that we've still got work to do. So, you know, maybe as, like I say, maybe I'd certainly be okay with a longer than top 10 list.
Councillor Hoffmeyer.
I'd gladly make a motion if it would help us out of this. I don't know that it will. I move that we approve of the top 19 council goals with the top 10 highlighted.
I'll second that.
Okay. So we do have a motion and a second now, so that motion is that we approve the top 19 goals as rated, recently rated, with the top 10 highlighted. So we have a motion and a second. Anybody want to speak to that, or anybody have a question? Councilor Wiesner?
I just have a question, 19, arbitrary number, and any reasoning why? Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. You know, but out of respect for the other council members, you know, I guess I'm just going to toss out there, why don't we just adopt this entire list in the order it's in, and keep the scoring apparent, and the scoring's weighted as to, where that priority. Obviously, a 5 on utility infrastructure aquarium. It's on a list hanging out there, but you can see by a 5 versus a 20, the weighting's way down there. I will tell you, that was my only 0 because I think what I put was, huh? And then the only reason I put huh is because the first time I'd heard about it, and so I didn't know what to put on the form other than huh, and apparently huh is a 0.
So we do have a motion and a second, and we have had at least a question about it, about considering all on the list.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment.
Okay, you're going to get into, okay. I think it has to be approved by the 2 people in the motion, but let's hear it.
I would say if this motion doesn't pass, I would support yours. It might be easier for all of us.
Okay, I'll call for the vote.
Anybody else question? All in favor signify by raising your right hand. So we have, is that Councilor Eisen? I can't see your hand. You're too close to the camera.
I apologize. I'm a little unclear as to what is going on. We're voting on the top 19. Councilmember Wiesner suggested just adopting all 32. But instead of amending the motion, is the plan to let the top 19 fail so that we can move on and then have a vote on the top 32?
I think that very likely might happen. We are voting on the motion, top 19, with the top 10 highlighted. So that was the original motion. That's what we're voting on right now. So I called for a show of hands. All in favor, raise your hand, and I just couldn't see whether you were voting or not.
Okay, I would prefer the top 32 over a 19, so I'm going to vote no.
Okay, so we only had 1 vote for, so that motion fails. Do we have a new motion?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. I move that we adopt the top 32 goals and rankings as presented.
Second.
Okay, so now the new motion is to adopt all 32 goals and rankings as presented. Isn't that correct? Okay. So that is the motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have 2 seconds. That was really close. I'm actually going to give that, I'm going to give that one to Munns. We did? Oh, I blew it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So that motion was made by Councilman Wiesner, second already made by Councilman Hoffmeyer. Anybody want to question the motion? Anybody got any other input? Okay, all in favor of that motion, please signify by raising your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That passes unanimously. By golly, we've got 32 goals. Okay. So thank you, Council. Thank you very much. We
Guys,
don't have to send that one back to staff again. Thank you. Gosh, where was I? So excited. Okay. We have finished all the regular items on our agenda. We will now go into executive session. The council will discuss, we are now moving into executive session to discuss with legal counsel litigation or potential litigation per RCW 4230 .110, section 1, I think paragraph I, and to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of increased price per RC, I think that's RCW, again, 4230 110, section 1B. Estimated duration is 30 minutes. Action may or may not be taken upon return to the open session. Executive sessions are not open to the public. So we're moving into the conference room at this time. 30 minutes from now, hopefully we'll be back out here. Okay, so it is 8:25, the evening of October 4th. Regular city council meeting for the city of Oak Harbor has been in executive session. We will now resume the regular open session. No action was taken regarding the matters discussed in executive session. I'd like to thank you for your patience, especially our staff and those certainly out there watching, all on city council. Unless somebody's got any further business, I don't believe there is, and I would accept a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Say aye. Raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Eisen, for sticking with us the whole time here, and thanks to all on council. We are adjourned.